8 or 9 out of 10 people have imposter episodes. The two people that haven't are either narcissists or they're that confident.
Because if we have an expectation that's based on something that's really not us, are we ever going to achieve it? We should get stuck in that loop rather than realizing, it's actually about what our capability is.
Next year, you're going to Afghanistan as a platoon commander. I shat my dacks. The first thing I thought of is, I'm going to get us all lost. And the second thing I thought of is, I'm going to get us all killed. Yeah. The doubt is data. It's not a stop sign. Do what leaders do. Say what leaders say. And then you're being a leader. You don't necessarily need to feel like it because they will come. Scott, here we are.
Yep.
Back. In Hindsight, the podcast. Today we're talking about imposter syndrome versus imposter episodes. We'll unpack that further as we go. How are you?
I'm not too shabby. How are you?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Right from the top, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It's not a syndrome though, is it?
Well, what's the difference?
Well, it's not pathology, so it can't be diagnosed. So it's actually an episode that someone's going through. Right. What's our next podcast?
Done. Mic drop. Yeah. It's funny actually because everybody calls it a syndrome. So if you say imposter episodes, do people actually understand what you're talking about? They think it's the same thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, we use it in workshops all the time, don't we? We say, who's ever had imposter syndrome? And then people put their hand up and then we explain to them it's not actually a syndrome, that it's actually an episode and that it's fleeting. It's not this chronic thing that's always happening. Yeah.
That's a really good point what you said there, because I think when you frame it as an episode, people understand that it's going to pass.
Well, okay. Yeah. So glad you said that. So if we can get people to think about it as not something pathological, they're not broken, it's this thing they're going through, fleeting, as an episode, then they can reframe that emotion from, I'm not broken to this is an event that I'm just navigating. And that makes it, I think, more manageable.
You look like you're speaking from experience.
Oh, we'll get to that for sure. Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. There's a reason that the Commando Way was actually called The Risk of Being Average when I was writing it. But actually, an interesting fact is that 67% of all statistics are made up on the spot. But I've used that joke so many times now. 80 to 90%, so 8 or 9 out of 10 people have imposter episodes. So nearly everyone has had an imposter episode in their life. And there's the two people that haven't are either narcissists or they're that confident. That's when the Dunning-Kruger effect comes in. They're either that confident about themselves that, that they don't have imposter episodes, and probably it's unfounded confidence, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is it?
An imposter episode?
Yeah. What do you think? How would you explain to somebody? If somebody doesn't recognize they're having an episode, how would you recognize it in them?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think it's important to go back first and talk about how it happens, how it manifests, before we then talk about how it is treated or how people can approach it. But if you think about pattern recognition, it's generally triggered when someone spots a pattern in you or a behavior in you or some skills in you and then says, hey, you're really great at this. You could be able to do that. That pattern recognition is they've seen someone of a similar intelligence and makeup and whatever the characteristics are, and then say that person that I've seen previously was successful here, therefore you should be. And then they project that onto you, even though you aren't aware of whether you can do that or not. And that can then evoke that imposter episode where you suddenly feel like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. And I mean, that can be all manners things. We see this all the time with junior leaders, right?
Yeah, lots. Yeah, in fact, it's probably one of the most common things I hear. It's usually around how do I get more confidence, or I think I'm, having an issue with imposter syndrome or an episode. And it's usually, to me, it's often just as simple as the fact that there's a gap between what their actual capability is and what they perceive their capability is, where they think it needs to be. But you just nailed it in regard, like you've been hired for that role because you meet the capability that somebody's been sourcing. If you just stood there and reflected on that, you'd probably feel a lot better about it. But there's lots of factors that come into play, like you say. But you've obviously been in a lot of high pressure situations and high performance teams. What's a time where you felt this?
I think a good metaphor. Don't know what's going on with my throat today.
It's a tough subject to swallow.
A good metaphor for this, I think, from a military perspective, is parachuting.
Okay.
And the reason I would use that as an explanation is you've never done it before when you rock up to learn how to be a paratrooper or a parachutist. So you don't know if you can do it. The instructors tell you can, and that's not where the story ends. It's not like that just stops and suddenly you're in an aircraft and you jump out parachuting. So the idea is that you are trained, you go through all the different serials and iterations of training, on the ground, learning how to roll, how to land, what the parachute is. Then they take you up into, learning to fly a parachute in harnesses, which are elevated off the ground, and someone tells you what to do with what. And then you talk about how to exit the aircraft. So it goes through in different stages. The whole time you're doing that, you're not a parachutist. You're a person under training. Right? And you don't really know if you can do this or not, but on a risk-adjusted basis, a lot of people have done it before, so you should be able to do it. Then you get into the aircraft and you do your check for equipment, and you go through the checks of equipment, and then the side door opens up and suddenly it becomes very fucking real very quickly. And in that moment, you are like, I have no idea if I can do this. But the fear for a lot of people, not everyone, but the fear for most people of not doing it in front of all their mates outweighs the fear of, of jumping.
Yeah.
So rather than go, I can't do this, and then walk to the back of the aircraft, they just go, I'm done. I'm just going to step out into the abyss and hope that I've remembered all this stuff. And the next thing you know, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, canopy okay, you look up, it's flying, you're flying, 1,000, 3,000 feet up in the air, and you look down, the ground is there. 30 seconds later, you're like, oh, I've got to land this thing, right? And then you get into your position, go through your drills in your head of how you're going to do it, lock your knees together, your ankles together, sort of slight bend in the knees, work out which way the wind's going, and then turn your hips and knees in sort of like a little bit of the opposite direction and just roll. And if it was me landing, it would be ass head, but it's meant to be sort of, hips, knees, and then shoulder, and then then roll over, get rid of that. But you stand up, you're now a parachutist. You no longer have any sort of doubt. You've done it. There should be no imposter. You're not an imposter anymore. You've achieved this thing. And that's why I think it's important. There's this term they use in the parachuting school, actually, down at Nowra, knowledge dispels fear. And I think that's a really important thing for us to unpack when it comes to imposter episodes. We'll come back to that in a moment. But if you think about what I'm saying, is that the more you understand about the situation that you're going to be in, the more you go and seek knowledge, you can still be an imposter, but then you've got to at some stage take that step and do that thing, and then give yourself permission to go, actually, I'm doing this. And I mean, I've seen people who are in jobs and they're successful who still think they're imposters even though they're doing it because they haven't given themselves permission to go, actually, I'm pretty good at this thing.
Yeah, that's great. I've never heard you use that analogy before, but it was completely relatable. And straight away I was thinking, after you've gone through that whole story, the moment of hitting the ground, you actually just know straight away that you do the next jump, you're going to feel much better about it.
Yeah. And that is true. The next time you're no longer an imposter. You're just now on a glide path of being more skillful.
Yeah.
And there's this Yerkes-Dodson law as well. It's a sort of 100-year-old idea. It's shaped like an upside down U, I guess. And you know, if you start with no nervous energy about what you're doing, you're not going to perform. But then as you start to perform, you get the risks become greater. And then at some point that nervous energy actually helps you perform better. But then too much of it means you perform worse.
Right.
So sometimes, a lot of people hate speaking in public, and they can feel like, I'm an imposter. Why am I standing up in front of this group talking about this subject? That little bit of anxiousness and nervous energy actually helps them perform better, but it can be debilitating too for some people if they haven't done the work. Now, this is important, and I've said this before, we say it a lot in our workshops, that an emotion or a feeling is generally a signal to move towards some sort of action. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're anxious about a performance you've got to give, you know, a speech you've got to give in front of a lot of people, and I've got so many of them in my head right now, like that I've had to do, prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. Well, the reason that's true is because you're still going to be nervous, but now you've prepared for it. And so that Yerkes-Dodson law doesn't take it all the way where you're so nervous that you capitulate to the feeling. You're just nervous enough that you actually nail it. That's not necessarily so for everyone, depending where they are on the neurodiverse sort of spectrum. A neurotypical person, that will definitely help. But if you are autistic, no amount of rehearsal of that subject matter is going to stop you being anxious. It's not the same. It's not wired. They're not wired the same to have that effect of, I can make this better by more preparation. It's just something that an autistic person's got to deal with. And then on the other end of the spectrum is if you have absolutely no sense, no feeling, you probably, you know, if you're Machiavellian and see everyone in the audience as a tool for your, you know, for your gain, then absolutely that's not going to worry you at all. You're just going to stand there and start, you know, I could make all sorts of very bad leadership jokes here, but yeah.
It's interesting hearing you frame that, because I was actually thinking about
we will ask the questions. That's what I was going to say. I knew I'd get you. Yeah, anyway,
well,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know exactly where you're going. And I know some people will get that too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about an experience I had, and I actually didn't recognize this stuff until you were just framing it up that way. I was crapping myself at, like you say, about speeches and public speaking. I remember at Yandy, one of my old mine sites, I was asked to step in for the RM and do the Anzac Day speech on site. And look, you would have done a million Anzac Day speeches.
I've done one.
Yeah, right. And in this case, what happened is, and I was thinking, why me? There's plenty of other people got more experience than me in this, and but I was asked to do it, and all that kind of stuff came through. And exactly what you said, the anxiety or the fear of doing that speech, man, I was crapping my dacks, and I had a speech that.
Sorry, I was just for any American listeners, crapping my dacks means I was nervous.
Yes, we probably need translation to it. But exactly what you said. It actually made me deliver I mean, even when I was doing the speech, I found that I'd practiced so much that I wasn't even reading my notes. And there was all the other things I was paying attention to, like the microphone, the wind on the microphone. I was like, oh, how's this coming across? All those kind of things were popping in. And nobody else noticed it. The feedback was like, that was great. And right up until it was just so much anxiety. But exactly what you said, I built so much preparation in there. It really paid off.
It's interesting you use that. Like, anxiety is the right word too. If you feel that you're having an imposter episode, and that episode might last and last and last your career, that anxiousness follows you through those situations. It could be at a board meeting. It might be at a meeting in your team, in front of your team of people, a stand-up meeting in the morning, pre-starts, those sort of things. Yeah, and I know there's heaps of people in that sort of emerging leadership field listening to us that would be doing pre-starts and thinking why. And it's an interesting thing to think about, because if you are nervous in your pre-starts and you feel like an imposter, it could be that you're not, and I don't like the word authentic, but it could be
That's a trigger point.
It could be that you're not actually conveying the content of the morning pre-start in your style. You are trying to copy the authenticity of someone else's style, and because you're doing that, you've not given yourself permission to be successful in your own right. And if you go, well, I'm a little bit of a joker actually, and let's have a bit of a morning joke, and then I want to put things across in this way, and perhaps it's you want to give everyone a piece of paper with all the notes on it. If that's the way that you think you have to do that job, then perhaps it's time you did it in your way and give yourself permission to not have an imposter episode, because it's your job.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
But if you're trying to replicate what everyone's done before you, because they could have all had imposter syndrome or imposter episodes, and just replicating the person before them. Now, I know this to be true because I believe I am a good leader. I am not a great leader when I first start leading a team for the first 3 to 6 months, because I'm nervous around them. We're not being shot at. We're not doing anything where it's critical. It's admin as usual, business as usual, and people are judging you based on how you show up. And so part of the way that new leaders in particular can make the job their own is start to get to know the people who you're leading intimately. Like, if you've got a span of command of 6 to 12 people, you want to be friends or, befriend that 6 to 12 people, get to know them well enough. So when you're looking at that group of people and they're looking back at you, you don't have 12 people looking back at you who you never talk to because you're always behind your computer. You want to have a group of people looking back at you who are like, oh yeah, that person's got my best interests at heart.
Right.
And if you can do that, you're probably going to feel less like an imposter because you're not. You're their leader.
Yeah, that's really great. That's really good. I'm just thinking like the first couple of months in any new role, you're really just building trust.
Yeah, and leadership's a funny one to feel like an imposter, as opposed to like a sports person or, someone who's been given a great opportunity. Because to be in a leadership position anyway, you've probably had to get there because you were technically great at something and you're probably a good team member, and now you're a leader.
Yeah.
So you're already a rung ahead.
Yeah. You meet the entry requirements.
Yeah, you've met the entry. Yeah, it's good.
So all right, you've just prompted me then. So how would you then know the difference between having an imposter episode versus just being new to something?
Yeah, I think there's probably a crossover between that, I'm assuming. Being new to something is where we can get dopamine from. So that's quite powerful. But I think it's where the risk is higher, the loss of something. I don't know, you started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu recently. Did you feel like an imposter walking into that?
Well, actually, I don't know.
I've got to tell you, I feel like one every Thursday evening when Nico's choking me out. But
I just think
that's
I was
BJJ,
approaching
by
you.
the way.
Yeah. Well, I can spell BJJ, so I know that now.
Yeah.
No, I think because my mindset is just, this is completely new to me. I'm just going to figure it out as I go.
Yeah.
I didn't have an expectation. I think that was probably the difference.
But if someone had said, as you walked in there, oh yeah, he's Scott, I'm pretty sure he's a black belt.
Oh, he's Bram, he's ex-special forces, like somebody did.
Like someone did do that to me. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.
The risk then is high of losing face, of not being able to keep up with the skill. That would have been very easy in that moment, as you said, for me to feel like an imposter there. But I think humility probably is a great safety net to stop you feeling like an imposter.
Yeah, good point.
The time that I had it the worst was probably the time that I should have been the most confident in myself, and that was in Afghanistan. Well, sorry, that was in the end of 2009, I was a platoon commander at the time in the National Counterterrorism Team, and my previous officer in command of the company I was in that went to Afghanistan, who I had worked with, was now the training officer for 2 Commando Regiment. And he called me into his office and he said, "Hey, I just want you to know that I've worked it out with the boss. Next year, you're going to Afghanistan as a platoon commander." And I shat my dacks, as you said, because I was like, I can't do a job, because all the other platoon commanders were bloody brilliant. You know, they were all specially selected, specially trained, and then I'd gone through the ranks, you know, to be an officer. Hadn't gone to RMC, hadn't gone to ADFA, hadn't done selection as an officer. I had done it as a corporal, but then was given a grandfather sort of clause to stay in the unit. There was all these reasons why I felt like an imposter in that moment. And then he said to me, "No, you'll be great at that. You can do this, you can do that. I've seen you in Afghanistan already as operations officer." And I was, you know, the first thing I thought of is, I'm going to get us all lost. And the second thing I thought of is, I'm going to get us all killed.
Yeah, I was going to say, lost is better first,
right?
yeah.
And, you know, like I was going to end up in an orange jumpsuit on Al Jazeera or something. But, you know, and it probably, it would have been our mission rehearsal exercise where we put all of the component parts together before we deployed, where I actually went, what I bring to this job, which is unique, is my ADHD hyper focus on shit and structure. I mean, you know, I like a list.
Yep.
Like I had notebooks of lists of shit, and like you could tell me we're going to face this thing, and I'll just flick to the page in the notebook where I had a list of how we were going to deal with it. Right. So that for me is a superpower as well as positivity. But that hyperfixation, that ability to put structure over chaos, you know, that pattern had been seen by that guy. I can't say his name. And he said to me, you know, you will be successful. I didn't see it then, but I saw it once we did our mission rehearsal exercise. And certainly it was exactly that power that I had, that thing that I did, which made me, you know, I would say quite successful in that role. And also I learned a lot about myself in the process because I applied those things to other parts of my life now. So that most visceral reaction to an imposter episode was also the steepest learning curve in my adult life to actually apply to other things. So I wouldn't see having an imposter episode as necessarily being detrimental to your future. It's a signal, and a signal should motivate you towards some sort of action.
Right.
It's when you get stuck on a loop of thought becomes feeling, becomes behavior, don't change anything, that you will continue to have that imposter episode.
I really liked when you started that conversation piece then, you said it was actually probably the time I should have felt the most confident.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing.
Even the doubt itself is data.
Yeah, right.
It's not a stop signal.
Right.
But I didn't know that the doubt was the data that I should have been going, okay, I've got this doubt. That's just data. What do I need to do? And in this case, all I needed to do was to go back and look at my history. Well, actually.
Beautiful. Yeah. Because there was no evidence to support that data.
No.
And that's because that's what I noticed with a lot of people when they're experiencing that. It's usually high performance.
Well, actually, the reason it's reinforced so strongly in my brain is because of self-efficacy.
Right. Yeah. And exactly, I really love what you were saying before, and those pre-starts is a great example. Because if we have an expectation that's based on something that's really not us, are we ever going to achieve it?
Yeah.
You know, and if we get stuck in that loop rather than realizing, you know, it's actually about what our capability is and let's work with that, it completely shifts.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, to use another pop culture sort of psychology term, if you can name it, you can tame it.
Yeah.
So if you can actually name, this is an imposter episode.
Great.
And because we've seen that. We've had people who've worked through that in our workshops who've gone, when we say raise your hands if you've ever had, you know, imposter syndrome, and 9 out of 10 people up, and then the Machiavellians over with making scones, right? that 9 out of 10 people are like, okay, well, talk to me about that episode you had. And when they start to talk about it, you can see them actually solving it in their heads. And then we're waiting for, so you want some coaching, and by then they're like, oh no, I've actually just solved that. Yeah. Thanks for the coin, arsehole. Right. So, but yeah, you know what I mean. If you name it, you can tame it.
Yeah.
Putting feelings into specific, measurable words calms down the amygdala, stops it being a threat response.
Yeah,
because
beautiful.
again, it's the amygdala drives most of the things in our life.
Yeah, the primitive brain, right?
Mm.
I actually, I haven't shared this with you. It was within the last week actually, and the conversations continued over a couple of days. Had a message from somebody in my network on LinkedIn who they've left a big company, joined a small company in a higher position, and really excited about it start, but they're about 2 or 3 weeks in. The message was straightforward. I think I'm going through an imposter episode. Asked a few questions, and they've actually turned around and said, actually, I think it's just because I've never done this before.
Yeah.
And so they've actually started exactly what you're saying. They actually started to solve it themselves, and now they're just working through building that capability.
So I wonder why they'd reached out to you. So they were feeling stressed that they'd be found out?
Yeah, I don't know. Quite possibly, because the role title is one, it comes with a lot of connotations to it, right? So it's probably the equivalent of a general manager kind of role when they've basically been at a superintendent role before, but the scope and scale is almost the same. So there's obviously greater accountabilities that come with that. But as it turns out, the capabilities they need for this particular scope and role, they've already got. It's just the particular task is something they're unfamiliar with.
Yeah, that is interesting. If that amygdala is firing for that person, so it's telling them it's a social threat, I'm going to get found out. It's just this slow, constant churn of anxiousness. And then it wouldn't take much for them to be told, oh, by the way, you've now got to deliver this thing in, whatever this report or this stand up about to the CEO.
Yeah.
And what actually happens, and I'm going to try and get the science right here because there is org psychs listening to us and clinical psychs who love to pull me up on shit. As I keep saying, it's business psychology. It's not. I'm not a therapist. So when you,
it's not a syndrome.
Yeah, okay. And you know what? I'm yet to have Brene Brown come back to me about her research on authenticity. When you have a threat, so when that amygdala is like, hey, ring 000, we need to fight, flight, freeze, or appease. I think what that does, from my understanding or memory back to my master's, is that it shrinks your hippocampus. So it actually makes your executive function not work the same. So you can't recall simple stuff when you're under threat. So if you have an imposter episode and you're being thrust up on a stage as the GM for whatever, right? And you've remembered, you've got all this stuff that you're meant to remember. Actually, there is a great video. I want to get this right. I think it's Samsung, the Samsung CEO. I might get this wrong, but we'll put it in the show notes. And he gets up to do a product launch on his newest smart TV and just goes dead quiet and can't say a thing.
Yeah.
And this is someone who would know that subject absolutely intimately, and it's probably an engineer of some sort. But again, that is a social threat. I'm up there. I've forgotten the first word. Now I don't know any words because the executive function is like, I can't recall anything in my short-term memory.
Yeah. Great example.
Yeah. And then he just walked off the stage. I'm pretty sure he quit.
Yeah. Poor bugger.
But, if you find yourself, I better save some people from this. If you find yourself in that position, I would just be straight into, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I literally am petrified of public speaking. The science proves that I shouldn't be able to do this, and I've just proved it right. Let me go and get some notes.
Yeah, great. Call it out.
Yeah, you have to. And that's not being an imposter. That's just being, that is your brain architecture working against you in real time in the wild. Like you are in flight mode. Yeah.
And that transparency builds trust too, just by doing that. Oh, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let me go get something sorted.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Well, I mean, I don't think you're right. I know you're right because we talk about trust. Actually, this has been an interesting episode. So I think if I was to, think about something that listeners could take away or those watching could take away from this week, would be probably to identify the fact that that one of the 8 out of 10 that has imposter episodes or is currently living through an imposter episode.
Yeah.
If you're the 2 out of 10 that aren't, we've got a podcast coming up soon about the dark side of leadership that you should
click this link.
that you should. We've got something for you. But if they're imposters, feel like an imposter, then what I would do is first of all just be able to name that, to be able to tame it.
Yeah.
Then understand how they got into the job they're in now. So all the things that they had to do. Like someone said to me, I'm trying to wrap this up, but I just had this memory. Someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm thinking about doing leadership stuff because I was an Army officer too. I mean,
Yep.
I was like, okay. What qualifications do you have to do that? And it triggered the shit out of me, right? Like, okay, I'm not sure if you're calling me out here or if, right, so this SCARF model, is it my status, my certainty, my autonomy, my relatedness, my fairness? It's one of those. And then I was like, I don't know. Every leadership position from sort of Lance Corporal through to Lieutenant Colonel in the Army, 15 years in, Special Forces, Captain through to Major, topped 3 of my promotion, courses, one as a sergeant, one as a warrant officer, and one as a, captain, was a major actually. And then I thought, written 3, now 4, 80,000 word books, started a podcast, built a leadership business, won the bursary for, at university for peace studies,
DSM.
And have, Distinguished Service Medal for Leadership in Combat. I forgot about that bit. And then have a master's in business psychology. But I'm not really.
Nothing.
Not sure that
There's
I
no
have
credibility
any
there,
credibility in leadership whatsoever. But it was great to be asked that question because I think it was actually an innocent, hey, what have you done? Can I do this? But because it triggered me, it made me realize there's probably a little bit of imposter about that thing, even when you know what an imposter episode is.
Yeah.
And then here's all the evidence that I can show you of a life that's been lived in that lane.
Yeah.
And if I still feel like, and I do occasionally feel like when I stand up in front of a big group, if I can feel like, I shouldn't really be doing this. There's people far better at this than me. If you go and look at Simon Sinek and you put what he has done, other than be massively successful, if you actually put what he has done, there's a reason he goes and asks Special Forces guys about leadership. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
I know exactly where you're going.
I just love to hear him talk about the time that he had an imposter episode.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he probably has.
Yeah.
But if you've got the clear evidence. Yeah.
It was really cool to hear you say that actually, because as people listening to it, and I was doing myself, it's like, why the hell would you be feeling that way with that whole list? Because that's what we see.
Yeah.
And yet we go through that same thing, right? We have those self-doubts and stuff, but you've just nailed it. The easiest way to go through it is become aware that that's what you're in and reflect on how you got to where you are. You've got the capability, all the evidence is there, and it grounds you. Yeah.
So it's not a syndrome.
Not a syndrome.
It's
not clinical.
It's an episode. I think the doubt is data. It's not a stop sign to not do it. It's just data that you need more knowledge.
Look for the evidence.
Affirmation.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think fake it till you make it works?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. I mean, people hate hearing that again, but if you think about the fact that you're in that position anyway, it's interesting. If you want to speak Italian, right? You are not an Italian speaker when you go to Rome. And if you just try and speak it from a guidebook, you're not fooling anyone, let alone yourself. But if you start to talk in an Italian accent, you say, what for? You're kicking my dog. Why are you calling fuck off, right? Vorremmo due cavallati, grazie, right? If you start to use a Italian accent, can't speak Italian, but if you start to use an Italian accent, then you are going to be more confident if you're playing. If you're playing like that, you're going to be more confident. You're going to actually learn faster.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And if you immerse yourself in that language, you are an imposter. You should have an imposter episode, but but the fact of the matter is that you're trying, and if you say it with an Italian accent and you start to listen to people and they'll give you quarter and they'll help you, the next thing you know, you're speaking Italian.
Beautiful. Another good analogy.
And I think it's the same with leadership. If you've been put into a leadership position, act like a leader and act like a leader, have fun with it, do what leaders do, say what leaders say, and then you're being a leader. You don't necessarily need to feel like it, because that will come.
And recognize you've already met the entry level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, chances are it's a duck.
Yep. All right. Yep. I think you're probably right there.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Ciao.
Ciao. Excellent.